Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends. Welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. So the market continues to be a very interesting place. We're a week removed from Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, and what we're starting to see this week is more of a digestion of the information. The metagame is starting to move forward and move on from the Pro Tour, and we're starting to see that reflected in the prices of some of the cards. As far as the other formats go, it's a little bit of a slower week for both Modern and Legacy, but we'll take a look at those as always as well. So let's jump in with Standard, and first let's see the cards that have lost value this week. Coming in at number 5 is Ishkana Graft Widow. Now she's down $1.03 to $11.01. Nothing that's super surprising here. Now this card saw a lot of play over the last few weeks of the new Standard season. It's going to continue to see play, but this isn't the type of card you necessarily want 4 of in your deck, and as more packs are being opened, there's going to be more of these out there in the marketplace made available. So yeah, paying $8 to $10 for this card is probably more reasonable than what it's been priced at over the last few weeks. So continue to watch this one. It'll probably come down at least a little more, but it will continue to see play for sure. Coming in number 4 is Temio Field Researcher, down $1.73 to $14.47. Now she has seen Standard play. It's mostly coming out of the sideboards, and again, this is not a card you necessarily want 4 of in your deck or anything like that. So because of that, her price is stabilizing and coming down a little bit. However, keep an eye on this card. I think this could be a good long-term investment. I think she's going to see more play in the future, especially post-rotation. So if you can grab some copies of Temio for $10, $12 within the next few weeks, it may be worth it to do so. I do think there'll be some more impact in the future with this card. Coming in number 3 is Gisela the Broken Blade. She's down $2.06 to $14.31. We talked a little bit about her last week. What's interesting about this card was she was super hyped when she was first previewed and during the pre-release season, and that was a time when the metagame was a little more focused on white and green-white decks. They're still out there. She's still seeing play, but there's been a refocus of the meta on these Teamer Emerge decks and black-white control and various other Delirium ramp-style decks. So there's so many options out there that this card was maybe just a little bit overhyped, a little bit overinflated early on. Still a great card, still going to see a lot of play. The thing that's held her back the most from becoming maybe a card that's seeing more play in, say, Modern or something like that is the 3 toughness, but regardless, still a good card. I think probably $14, $12 is more of a fair price, though, than what she was originally listed at. Next we have Spell Queller. This is down $2.30 to $12.49. Now this is a card that saw tons of play over the last few weeks and even at the Pro Tour. So why is it coming down so dramatically? Basically, this is the first card on our list that's a rare and not a mythic. Packs are being opened, more and more copies of this card are being flooded into the marketplace. So as you can imagine, the value of this is going to start to go down. I would expect that this card will probably settle in around the $8 to $10 mark, even though it will still see a lot of play going forward. And coming in at number 1 is Liliana the Last Hope, down $2.96 to $44. Now, last week she spiked tremendously due to the popularity of this card at the Pro Tour. Of course, this was the card that basically won the Pro Tour in the finals. And yeah, there was a lot of attention on her. She spiked up to about $50. That is very, very high for a brand new card, even if it is a mythic Planeswalker. So what we're seeing now is just normal stabilization. She's going to continue to come down a little bit. I would say probably once we get down a few weeks into the new Standard, she'll probably fall to about $35, maybe even $30 range. So keep an eye on this card. If you're looking to pick up copies of her, wait for more packs to be opened. Again, this is a card that doesn't necessarily want to be a 4 of in a lot of decks. So $44 still seems a little bit high for this card, but it's a fantastic card and is already starting to see some Modern play here and there too, so keep an eye on it as well as a long-term investment. All right, let's move on to the cards that have gained value this week in Standard. And coming in at number 5 is Archangel Avacyn, up 32 cents to $21.99. We haven't seen her here in a while. She's been on the down list for quite some time, but she saw a lot of play in the Pro Tour. She's going to continue to see play. It's a fantastic card, so it doesn't surprise me that she's just going to stabilize now and go up a little bit. I think about $20 to $25 is probably a fair price at this point in the meta for this card. She's very good. She's going to continue to see play. Number 4 is Traverse the Ulvenwald, up 42 cents to 392. Now, this card is one of the best bargains potentially on the list today, on probably any of the lists today. When this was first previewed, I looked at this and said, wow, this is incredibly powerful. Tutor effects are powerful, especially when you start looking at formats like Modern or even Legacy, where it's very easy and your graveyard will be populated very quickly. Cards like this have tremendous potential, and we saw that potential in the Pro Tour this past weekend. We saw this in the Teamer Emerge decks, really doing a lot of work, even in the finals. So that attention has got this card to come up a little bit. However, you can still pick these up for $3-4. Yeah, if you don't have a play set of these yet, get them. This is a fantastic long-term card. It's going to see play in many other formats besides Standard. Keep an eye on this one. I think this may be one of the biggest cards to come out of this block. Coming in number 3 is Nissa Vastwood Seer, up 67 cents to 1572. Not a huge increase here, obviously, but this is a card that has been around in Standard since it was printed, and it's continuing to stick around, especially in the ramp decks and such. So keep an eye on this card. I don't expect it to really spike or anything like that because the metagame seems diverse enough. However, this will probably hang around the $15 mark until it gets closer to rotating out this fall. Coming in number 2 is Collective Defiance, up $1.63 to 303. Now, these rare Escalate cards are all very exciting, and this card in particular is exciting. Now, if you don't have playsets of these rare Escalate cards yet, I'd pick them up while you still can get them pretty cheap. This is one of the more expensive ones, but $3 is incredibly reasonable. Now, the reason this one's climbing as significantly as it is this week is because even though this did see some play at the Pro Tour, it definitely got some attention there, but even since the Pro Tour, this card has continued to see more play. There are some folks trying to brew kind of the mono red decks in Standard, and I think something will probably come from that. But we've already seen success in the past week at one of the Star City Games regionals of a Izzet kind of tempo burn style deck, and this of course was a big key part of it. So keep an eye on this card long term, as well as some of the other burn cards that are currently in Standard. And finally, number 1 is Kozilek's Return, of $1.97 to $11.77. And we talked about this card last week as well. Obviously, this combos extremely well with some of the Eldrazi's like Emrakul. And because of that, this has a fantastic spot for quite some time in Standard, especially in like that Teamer Emerge deck. So yes, that's what's reignited this card. All right, let's move on to Modern. Now, Modern's a little slower this week, but we're going to see here, for the most part, for the cards that are losing value, are cards that were recently bought out that are just coming off their spikes. So let's start off with number 5, which is Liliana the Veil. She's down $2.95 to $100.41. Now, she has not, thankfully at this point, really been target of a buyout. This is just normal fluctuation. Once a card's up around $100, I mean, $2 to $3 and change isn't really that dramatic, and she's just really been hanging around the $100 mark for a while now. Number 4 is 10th edition Brushland, down $3.82 to $13.34. Now, I talked about this card a couple weeks ago, and legitimately this card saw attention as part of the Bant Eldrazi Modern deck, which was very popular, still very popular. And when that deck started to rise to prominence, this card really shot up. I think mostly it was due to the fact that I think aesthetically a lot of people like this version of Brushland better than many of the other versions. Having said that, I do think this caused some artificial inflation in the card, and over time I think speculators were also starting to pick up the card as they saw it spiking. Now, you can get an Ice Age version of Brushlands for just a couple dollars, really, and that's an original version. Now, granted, it might not look quite as nice as this one, quite honestly, but if you have a budget version of the card, especially if it's an original version of the card, I find it really hard to spend $13-14 on this version. So, I mean, if you really like it and that's important to you, then obviously you might spend a few extra dollars to pick this up. But realistically, I think this is going to continue to drop just because there's other budget options for this card out there right now. Coming in at number 3 is Nimbus Maze, down $4.68 to $21.38. Again, we talked about this in the past. This spiked about a month ago now when there was a buyout, and it's been coming down pretty dramatically ever since. The thing with this type of buyout is it's very highly speculative that just because cards like Horizon Canopy or Grove of the Burn Willows have really gone up in value, that these other cards are waiting to just jump. And that really isn't the case. We saw some inflation sparked by the buyout, but ultimately there's just not enough people looking for this card or playing this card in decks for it to matter that much. And now, as they're getting reintroduced into the market, guess what? This is dropping down quite dramatically. Number 2, River of Tears, down 477 to 1150. Basically copy and paste everything I just said about Nimbus Maze right here to River of Tears. Exact same story, and this card is already on the downswing. Finally, coming at number 1 is Mishra's Bauble, down 953 to 2375. Now, this is a card, again, originally it garnered natural attention due to the fact that it was part of the Sacrifice Zoo deck in Modern, which has done very, very well. Unfortunately, I think after it gained that attention, speculators jumped in, started buying copies. Perhaps there was a mini buyout of this card. But again, I think what some speculators really fell short of noticing was the fact that this is a Cold Snap uncommon. Now, Cold Snap wasn't printed in the numbers that sets are printed today. However, this was still an uncommon, and there's probably tons of these sitting in people's boxes and trade binders. And once this spiked, everybody started to liquidate them. So even though it saw a very healthy increase recently, I think it's going to come back down very, very quickly, and that's evident of what we're already seeing this week. All right, let's look at the cards that have gained value this week in Modern. And really, there's nothing too out of the ordinary here. These are basically just staples that are at least increasing slightly in price. Coming in number 5, we got Verdant Catacombs, up 96 cents to 74.51. Number 4 is Counterbalance, up $1.39 to $27.99. I do want to point out, this of course is a Modern legal card. It was printed in a Modern legal set. However, the reason this has gone up in value is more due to Legacy than it is Modern. Now, this card has seen a ton of play in Legacy in the Miracles deck. And at one point, it looked like maybe this or Sensei's Dividing Top was going to be banned. When it wasn't, we saw a jump in this card. However, I think we've seen the top of this spike. As a matter of fact, over the last couple days even, this card has come down a little bit from around the $29 mark. So be careful. If you're looking to pick up Counterbalance, you may want to wait a week or two and see what this card does. Number 3 is Noble Hierarch, up $1.91 to $51.74. This is the Conflux version. And again, this is just another classic example of a staple that is slowly rising in value. And the funny part of this is this was printed not that long ago in Modern Masters. They could print this every 2 years in Modern Masters, and every time it comes out, it'd probably be about a $60 card. Even at the rare level, it does keep the price in check, but the card still climbs and climbs and climbs. It just goes to show you how useful of a staple this card is in many, many formats. Coming in number 2 is Greater Gargadon, and this is the Time Spiral version, up 246 to 650. Last week we saw a spike in the Modern Masters version. This time around, Time Spiral's catching up. Again, this is seeing play in the Modern Dredge deck. Much like Counterbalance, though, this has already dropped in the last couple days. So if you're looking to pick some of these up, granted they're not super expensive, but you may want to wait a week or so. This might start to come down slightly. And finally, number 1, speaking of staples, Horizon Canopy, up 264 to 79.16. It's kind of where this card hangs out, sees a lot of play in Modern. It's going to continue to. This isn't really a big change for this card. All right, let's move on to Legacy. And what you're going to see here is a couple things. First off, in the cards that lost value, what you'll notice is, again, there's some cards here that recently were a target of a buyout that are already starting to come down. So starting at number 5 is the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, down $25.57 to $13.99. Now, when a card costs $1,400, $25 change really is insignificant. Number 4 is Nether Void, down $27.70 to $342.50. Now, this is a card that has been a target of a buyout recently, and this is the first week we're starting to see it come down. At its peak, I think it was up close to $400, so it's already going to begin descending. I think it's going to descend pretty quick. Number 3 is Drop of Honey, down $29.05 to $109.92. Another card that was recently a part of a buyout and already coming down very, very quickly. I do think $100, even maybe even $80-$90 is more of a fair price for this card. But again, it is a very rare card from the early days of Magic, so expect it to at least hold its value around $100 ultimately. Unlimited Underground Sea down $33.66 to $565.32. Again, this is just kind of normal fluctuation. Even though this week Underground Sea has gone down in value a little bit, you're going to see in a few moments that some of the other dual lands have gone up. And finally, Candelabra of Tawnos is down $52.50 to $499.99. Again, this card just kind of hops all over the place. It does see play, and it does shift a little bit as the meta shifts, but it kind of naturally sits around the probably $450 to $550 mark, so this is really nothing unusual for this card. Alright, so what's gain value this week? Well, I alluded to it already. You're going to see a good number of the dual lands this week, but coming in number 5 is Gauntlet of Might Unlimited version, up $5 to $225. Number 4 is Badlands Unlimited, up $6.34 to $159.45. Number 3 is Unlimited Tundra, up $12.52 to $414.37. Number 2, Unlimited Tropical Island, up $20.36 to $348.19. So like I mentioned before, I mean, these dual lands, they're the core staples of Legacy and Vintage, and really any Eternal format going forward. So even when you see Underground Sea, for example, lose a little bit of ground, as you can see, that money just went other places. So these are all going to continue to rise long term. And finally, number 1 is Mirror Universe, up $24.02 to $113.73. This card has seen a little bit of a spike this week. I don't know if it's actually a buyout or if it's just interest in collectors and speculators in general. It's a classic card. It's been a fan favorite card in the past. So this doesn't surprise me to see this increasing, but this is increasing a little bit quickly. So this may be unnatural. We'll know probably within the next couple weeks when we see what happens to this card. So having said that, that's the market watch for this week. It's going to be interesting to see what happens the next couple of weeks with the release of conspiracy spoilers, if they'll have any impact on the Legacy market, and if they do, how much of an impact. I don't know if it will be as big as Eternal Masters. That was just a huge impact on that market, but it could get some attention back there depending on what kind of cards are printed. But we will know in the next week or so. Until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality content for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't yet had a chance to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.